Welcome to Timeless Wisdom Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about gratitude and how recognizing the blessings that Allah has bestowed upon us can lead to amazing personal growth.
You know, it's so interesting how often we just completely overlook the countless blessings that are already there before we even exist, you know?
It's true. The Quran talks about that, right?
Yeah.
How Allah created the earth and all its wonders, perfectly preparing it for humans to live on it.
Yeah.
Even paradise, existed before Adam, peace be upon him.
Yeah, these examples are really a perfect way to illustrate this concept of divine providence, that Allah is guiding and caring for all of creation.
Yeah.
A mother's milk is ready the second that a baby needs it.
Right.
Sustenance is provided for us before we're even born.
Wow.
It's an invitation for us to think about all those blessings that we often take for granted.
Yeah.
Air that we breathe.
Yeah.
The water we drink.
The fact that we're alive.
Just being alive.
It's we're entering a world that's already perfectly designed to just support us and nurture us.
Exactly.
And speaking of design, the universe itself is such a magnificent testament to Allah's power and wisdom, isn't it?
Absolutely. The Quran encourages us to contemplate the workings of the sun and the moon and the stars and the huge variety of plant life.
Yeah.
All this stuff couldn't have just happened randomly.
Right.
It points to a creator that is far beyond anything that humans can even comprehend.
This reminds me of something that I read in Modern Psychology
Oh, yeah.
about this power of awe and wonder.
Okay.
When we experience those feelings of awe and wonder,
Yeah.
our perspective shifts and we become more open to new ideas and new possibilities.
That's so true.
Isn't it amazing how those ancient teachings perfectly align with modern scientific discoveries?
It really is.
It's the Quran is inviting us to explore the world around us almost scientifically.
Yeah.
Leading us to a deeper understanding of the creator behind it all.
Absolutely. And that understanding is what is going to unlock profound personal growth.
Okay, so we have the universe as this grand sign that's pointing us towards a creator.
Right.
But how do we move beyond just recognizing that he exists to truly understanding his will and his purpose for us?
Well, think of it this way. When you're appreciating a really beautiful painting,
Okay.
appreciating is one thing, but to really understand what the artist was intending, you need some deeper insight.
I see.
And that's where the prophets come in.
Right. They're like the messengers.
Yeah.
Bridging that gap between what humans can understand and that divine knowledge.
Yeah.
Giving us a roadmap, a set of guidelines to navigate all these complexities in life.
Yeah.
And to reach our full potential.
Exactly. And what's so interesting is that the guidance that the prophets give us often really contrasts with those human-made systems. It's like communism and capitalism.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later.
We'll definitely discuss that.
But first, I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier about divine providence.
Okay.
Can you talk about that a bit more? Because I think it's such a powerful concept.
Yeah. So divine providence, like we touched on, is that Allah guides and cares for all of creation.
Yeah.
It's the belief that nothing happens randomly and that everything that happens unfolds according to his divine plan.
Okay.
This doesn't mean that we don't have free will,
Right.
but rather that our choices and actions are part of a much larger picture,
Yeah.
guided by wisdom far beyond our own.
That is a beautiful way to put it.
Thank you.
It's even with all the uncertainties in life, there's a guiding hand,
Yeah,
a divine purpose that's unfolding.
exactly.
It takes away so much of the stress and anxiety and fear that we often feel.
Absolutely. And it can lead to a feeling of peace and surrender.
Yeah.
It allows us to trust Allah's plan even when we don't fully understand what it is. And that trust, that reliance on the divine, that's a key part of personal growth in Islam.
This makes me think about the story of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him. He faced so many trials and tribulations, but he never lost faith in Allah's plan.
Right.
His story is such a good reminder that even when times are really dark,
Yeah,
that divine providence is at work.
that's a great example.
Yeah, and it really highlights this important point that recognizing Allah's blessings and trusting in his plan doesn't mean that life is going to be free of any difficulty.
Right. It doesn't mean that.
But it means that we'll have the strength and resilience to go through those challenges gracefully and wisely.
Exactly. It's not about expecting life to be free from hardship,
Right.
but about going through those hardships with a different perspective.
So it's not about expecting a life without hardship, but approaching those hardships with a different point of view.
Right. It's about recognizing that even challenges are opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
Opportunities for getting closer to Allah and developing our character.
This reminds me of something else that the Quran emphasizes.
Okay.
The power of like asking Allah for guidance and support,
Yeah.
supplication.
That's a perfect transition to our next point.
Okay.
The Quran describes this constant access that we have to Allah as the open door of supplication.
Okay.
It contrasts that limited access that we have to authority figures, human authority figures,
Right.
with the always open door of prayer.
It's so comforting.
It is.
But doesn't that raise some questions about why sometimes it feels like prayers aren't being answered?
It's a good question, and a lot of people struggle with it, but it's important to remember that Allah's wisdom is so much greater than ours.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we think is an unanswered prayer is actually a redirection or a protection from something that we don't even see.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like when a loving parent says no,
Right.
it's for your own good.
Exactly. And even when it feels like our prayers aren't answered, the act of turning to Allah in supplication,
Yeah.
that in itself brings us closer to Him. It strengthens our faith, and it helps us to become more humble.
Exactly.
So it's not just about getting what we want, but about really building that relationship with Allah through sincere and heartfelt communication.
Exactly. And within that communication, there's a really powerful concept that a lot of people don't understand.
Okay, I'm interested. Tell me more.
The Quran actually teaches us that Allah loves being asked.
Really?
Yeah, it kind of flips the script on how we usually see asking for help.
That's interesting. Can you explain that more?
Sure. So we often see asking for help as like a burden or a sign of weakness. But in Islam, when you ask Allah, it's an act of acknowledging His power,
Yeah.
His generosity, and our dependence on Him.
It's like recognizing that He is the source of every blessing
Exactly.
and that we can't really thrive without His guidance and support.
Exactly. And that changes our whole perspective from one of scarcity to one of abundance and trust.
Wow. This is resonating so deeply with me.
And glad.
Like a whole new way of thinking about my relationship with Allah.
That's what it's all about. And that change in perspective is exactly what's going to lead us into the next part of our conversation. The fact that Allah's blessings are limitless.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. But before we get into that, let's talk about how the guidance that's provided by prophets contrasts with these human-made systems like communism and capitalism.
Okay, sounds good. It's fascinating to think about how different the world would be if we actually embraced the guidance that prophets like Muhammad, peace be upon him, offered.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, so often we get caught up in all these systems and ideologies that humans have created. But what would it even look like to structure our lives and societies based on divine principles?
Well, the Quran actually critiques both communism and capitalism,
Oh, wow.
and it highlights their inherent flaws and limitations.
Can you tell me more about that? I'm really curious to hear this critique from an Islamic perspective.
Yeah, so communism, with its emphasis on centralized control and suppressing individual liberties,
Okay.
often leads to tyranny and stifling creativity. It tries to create this artificial equality by denying that Allah gives different talents and abilities to different people.
That makes sense. It's like forcing everyone into the same mold, even though they all have unique abilities and dreams.
Exactly. And then on the other side, you have capitalism,
Right.
which promotes individual freedom and innovation.
Yeah.
But it often leads to excessive materialism,
Yeah.
inequality, and exploitation of people and resources.
Yeah, it's like the pursuit of profit becomes the only goal.
Right.
And it overshadows everything else, even our moral and spiritual values.
Exactly. And the Quran reminds us that true wealth isn't about material possessions.
Right.
It's about our connection with Allah, our good deeds, and how we help other people.
So both communism and capitalism,
Right.
even though they seem like completely opposite ideologies,
Right.
they both fail to achieve true justice and balance.
Exactly. And this is where the guidance that prophets offer is so powerful.
Yeah.
The Quran emphasizes justice and compassion and a balanced way of life. That considers our own needs, but also the needs of the whole community.
This reminds me of the verse from the Quran that says, "O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm for Allah witnesses in justice, and do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Be just that is nearer to righteousness. And fear Allah, indeed Allah is acquainted with what you do."
That's a powerful verse.
It is. It really highlights how important it is to uphold justice,
Yeah.
even when it's hard.
Right.
Even when it means going against our own biases or what society is telling us to do.
Exactly. It's like we're called to be better than the systems that humans create.
Yeah.
And strive for a higher standard of morality and ethical conduct.
So it's not just some abstract ideal.
No.
It actually affects how we live our lives, how we treat other people, and how we build our societies.
Exactly.
Can you give some examples of what that would look like in real life?
Sure. So in an Islamic society, wealth isn't supposed to be hoarded by a few people.
Right.
It's supposed to circulate through systems like zakat, which is a form of charity that makes sure that everyone has what they need.
It's like building a safety net into the very structure of society.
Yeah.
So everyone has access to basic necessities and opportunities.
Exactly. And even beyond material support, Islam really emphasizes compassion and kindness and respect for every single person in society, no matter their background beliefs or social status.
That reminds me of the hadith, where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself."
That's a great reminder.
It really challenges us to go beyond just thinking about ourselves.
Yeah.
And to truly care about the well-being of other people.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected.
Yeah.
We're all part of one big human family.
Exactly. And I think that's essential for building a just and harmonious society.
It is.
So we've talked about how the Quran critiques both communism and capitalism and offers this alternative that's based on divine principles of justice and compassion and balance. But how do we as individuals actually bridge the gap between these ideals and our everyday lives?
That's a really good question. And it brings us back to that idea we were talking about before.
Go ahead.
The power of making supplication.
Right. The idea that we can talk to Allah directly through prayer.
Yes.
And that He actually wants to hear from us.
Exactly. This open door of supplication isn't just for asking for things.
Okay.
It's for seeking guidance and strength and wisdom and everything we need to live our lives according to Allah's will.
It's like having a direct connection to the ultimate source of support and wisdom.
Exactly. And remember, the Quran says that Allah's blessings are limitless.
Wow.
A never-ending bounty that includes material things, but also spiritual guidance, inner peace, and the strength to get through tough times.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's like shifting our perspective from one of scarcity and limitation to one of abundance and possibility.
Exactly. It's like realizing we have access to this infinite source of love and wisdom and support.
And that realization can be so freeing. It allows us to approach life's challenges with more confidence because we know that we're not alone.
Right.
And that we have access to divine guidance every step of the way.
This reminds me of the story of Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, when he was leading the Israelites out of Egypt and they got to the Red Sea.
Yes, a powerful story about faith and trusting in Allah's plan.
Exactly. They were facing this impossible obstacle.
Right.
And Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, turned to Allah in prayer. And through divine intervention, the sea parted and they were able to escape to safety.
It's a beautiful example of how, when we combine supplication with unwavering faith, incredible things can happen.
Yes, it is.
It's like realizing that even when we reach our limits, Allah's power and wisdom can create a way forward.
Exactly. And that can be so empowering, especially when we're facing challenges in our own lives.
Yeah.
It reminds us that no matter how difficult things get, we always have access to divine support.
So it's not about denying the reality of hardship or expecting miracles.
Right.
It's about facing those hardships with a different mindset.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even challenges are opportunities to grow closer to Allah and develop our character.
This makes me think of the verse from the Quran that says, "And we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patient."
That's a powerful verse.
It really is. It acknowledges the reality of hardship while also offering hope and encouragement.
It's like saying that challenges are a part of life,
Yeah.
but how we react to them is what really matters.
And the Quran encourages us to respond with patience and perseverance and trust in Allah's plan.
Right.
Which brings us back to the idea of divine providence, doesn't it?
It does. It's about recognizing that even when things are difficult and uncertain, there's a guiding hand, a divine purpose that's unfolding.
That we're not just passively accepting whatever happens to us.
No.
We're actively engaging with our circumstances, seeking guidance, and trusting that even challenges are part of a larger plan for growth and development.
Exactly. And that active engagement, that conscious choice to align ourselves with divine principles, that's where true personal growth begins.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the power of gratitude, the importance of seeking guidance from Allah, and the limitless nature of His blessings.
I'm glad to hear that it really is amazing how these concepts, when you explore them in depth, offer such profound insights into our place in the universe and our potential for growth.
It really is, and as we've been talking, I've noticed some really interesting similarities between some of these Islamic principles and ideas I've come across in modern psychology.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
Well, for example, both Islam and positive psychology emphasize gratitude.
Okay.
In Islam, we're constantly reminded to be thankful for Allah's blessings.
Yeah.
And in positive psychology, gratitude is seen as this key ingredient for happiness and well-being.
That's a great observation. It really shows how universal these principles are.
Yeah.
They resonate across different cultures and time periods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another similarity I've noticed is the focus on mindfulness and being present in the moment.
Okay.
In Islam, we're encouraged to be mindful of the law in everything we do.
Right.
And in mindfulness practices, the focus is on cultivating this non-judgmental awareness of the present moment.
That's fascinating. It's like both Islam and mindfulness practices are guiding us towards a way of being that's more grounded, more connected, and more in tune with the divine presence in our lives.
It really is. And that connection, that awareness of Allah's presence is what ultimately brings true peace and contentment and fulfillment.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of fulfillment, there's another important aspect of personal growth that we haven't touched on yet. The concept of purpose and meaning in life.
Oh yeah, that's such a crucial part. In a world that often feels so chaotic and meaningless, how do we find our purpose, our reason for being?
Well, Islam offers a very clear and profound answer to that.
What is it?
The Quran teaches us that the ultimate purpose of our lives is to worship Allah. Now, this doesn't just mean rituals like prayer and fasting, although those are definitely important.
Right. It's about so much more than that.
Exactly. It's about living our whole lives in a way that pleases Allah,
Yeah.
aligning our thoughts, our actions, and our intentions with His will.
Okay.
It's about using our talents and abilities to serve Him and make a positive impact on the world.
So it's about finding purpose and meaning by serving others, by contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And that feeling of purpose, that connection to something larger than ourselves, that's what gives our lives meaning and direction.
This reminds me of the verse from the Quran that says, "And I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me."
It's such a powerful verse.
It is. It really highlights our fundamental purpose for existing, the reason why we're here.
It's like realizing that we're not just here randomly wandering around aimlessly,
Right.
but that we were created with a specific purpose, a divine mission to fulfill.
And that can be so empowering.
It is. It gives us a framework for making decisions and setting goals and navigating all the complexities of life.
So it's all about aligning our lives with that ultimate purpose, with our reason for being.
Exactly. And when we do that, we find true fulfillment and contentment and a deep sense of belonging.
This conversation has been truly inspiring. I feel like I've gained this whole new understanding of the power of gratitude and the importance of asking Allah for guidance and the fact that His blessings are limitless.
I'm so glad to hear that. It really is amazing how these simple concepts, when you really dive into them, can reveal such profound truths about gratitude, divine guidance, the meaning of life, and our potential for growth.
And for those listening who are interested in learning more about how these timeless principles can be applied to their financial lives, I highly recommend checking out the Broke Entrepreneur YouTube channel.
That's a great resource.
Yeah, you'll find a lot of great advice and strategies for aligning your financial goals with your spiritual values. Remember, the Quran's wisdom is timeless. Apply it today. Wow, it's amazing how much we've covered in this conversation, like from gratitude and divine providence to the purpose of life and the endless blessings from Allah.
Yeah, it really shows how deep and beautiful Islamic teachings are. Each concept kind of builds on the others and helps us understand our place in the world and how much potential we have for growth.
And that idea that Allah loves being asked, I think that's so powerful. It makes us rethink how we approach, and it encourages us to build a closer, more dynamic relationship.
Definitely. It's about being active instead of just accepting whatever comes our way. We can go directly to the source of all blessings, and Allah wants to hear from us. He wants to know our needs and desires and fears, everything.
It's like having a parent who loves it when their child asks her things, not because they need something from the child, but because they just love giving and nurturing.
That's such a great analogy. And that childlike trust, that willingness to ask without worrying about bothering Allah, that's so important for building a strong connection with Him.
This reminds me of a story about a man who was struggling financially. He'd always worked hard and been responsible, but things just got really difficult for him.
Oh, wow. What happened?
Well, instead of giving up, he prayed to Allah. He poured his heart out, told him all his worries, and asked for help. And you know what? It wasn't like he suddenly won the lottery or anything,
Right.
but he got something much more valuable.
What's that?
He felt this incredible sense of peace and clarity through prayer. He felt closer to Allah, and he knew he wasn't alone in this.
Wow.
And with that newfound strength, he was able to look at his problems differently. He started seeing opportunities he hadn't noticed before and making small but important changes.
That's a perfect example of how even when supplication doesn't magically solve all our external problems, it can totally change how we feel inside.
Exactly. Allah's blessings aren't just material things. They're also guidance and wisdom and strength and resilience and that deep sense of peace that helps us through any situation.
And that's what helps us get through tough times, knowing that we have this infinite source of support and guidance to help us face those challenges.
This makes me think of the verse from the Quran that says, "And whoever relies upon Allah then, He is sufficient for him. Indeed, Allah will accomplish. His purpose Allah has already set for everything a decreed extent."
Such a beautiful and reassuring verse. It reminds us that when we put our trust in Allah and surrender to His plan, He'll always take care of us and guide us.
It's like we're letting go of this need to control everything, and surrendering to a power that's much greater than us.
Yeah, and in that surrender, we find real freedom. We're free from the anxiety and burden of trying to control every little thing.
This has been such a deep and eye-opening conversation. I feel like I understand so much more about the power of gratitude and asking Allah for guidance and how truly limitless His blessings are.
It's been wonderful exploring these ideas with you, and I hope everyone listening has found it just as enlightening and inspiring.
And for those who want to learn even more about these teachings and how to use them in their daily lives, I encourage you to read the Quran and learn from knowledgeable scholars and to make prayer and reflection a regular part of your life. And as we mentioned before, if you're interested in aligning your finances with your spiritual values, check out the Broke Entrepreneur YouTube channel. Remember, the Quran's wisdom is timeless. Apply it today.